Friends and fans, I'm Jackie Martling. This is Standup Memories. I'm introducing the show because today the interviewer is going to be none other than Peter Bales. I'm looking at these two guys and I can't help but think of the joke of the two old guys at the bar. And the one guy says, look at those guys over there. That's what we're going to look like in 10 years. And the other guy says, you asshole, that's a mirror. But these three old men here are dear, dear friends from forever ago. And we figured, we have not had a guest yet. My first guest on this show was Peter Bales, and we hit it off so well that we yacked for the next 20 shows. We're finally sick of each other, so we called the dearest friend that we both have. I was all full of coffee and ready to go. And I sat there, I'm out of gas, so I'm handing the ball to Peter Bales. But he'll introduce our guest. And this is our first guest, which is very, very exciting. And we told them to just roll the cameras till we run out of gas. We'll stop every once in a while so us old people can go and pee or whatever else we have to do. And I'm really excited about this show. And usually I'm not. I mean, how excited would you be about sitting down and getting to talk to Peter Bales? I mean, do the math.
Well, thank you, Jackie. You're delightful.
It's not your turn to talk to. So without further ado, I do love this, and I haven't told Peter this yet, but I was at a family wedding all weekend, and everybody watches this. One guy watches this show and really enjoys it, which is enough to keep anybody going. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Peter Bales.
Jackie, thank you. That means a lot to me. This is going to be so much fun. Jackie and I have been yapping away on Stand-Up Memories, and now we've got our first guest, and we both wanted this guy because this is Danny McKenna, the legendary manager of the legendary comedy club in West Orange, New Jersey, that in the 80s and 90s had everybody, and everything happened.
I'm at the point where I hate that word. Because every time somebody says legendary, you're a legend, all I hear is old.
Yeah.
There's no specialness to it. It's like, as opposed to you're an old man, you're a legend.
Well, at the same time, I got no ego about myself, so the word legendary.
Who cares? Right.
Danny's legendary, Jackie, frankly, you're old.
I'll take it.
And Danny saw everything behind the scenes and on stage, and we want to have fun. Jackie was there forever. I was there forever. We saw it, but Danny really saw it. And off the top of your head, Danny, give us a memory of somebody who wasn't the same off stage as they were on stage.
Geez, should have set me up with a question like that, but I started when Jackie was doing stand-up, the amateur night. You did Tuesday nights. Thing would go on for 3 to 4 hours.
Well, that was my finagle. I was working 1 day a week on the Howard Stern show for free. And I'm like, what am I going to do to parlay this? And I had the whole tri-state area listening to me. And I said to Mark from Rascals, pay me a few dollars, and I'll say I'm hosting the Rascals open mic night on Tuesday nights. And then he'd get some people in there, but it was worth, whether anybody showed up or not, it was worth to have Rascals promoted on WNBC. And so, it was always a free-for-all, the same. It was like 12 people, and you'd get like
20.
Well, but like 6 or 7 of the people that kind of rotated who showed up. But like one of them was Bobby Levy came up, and he was so absolutely disgusting that the next time he came up the next week, I said, here's Reverend Bobby Levy. And then 20 years later, I find out he's still
the Reverend.
Bob Levy became the Reverend Levy. He's
those
well-known comic.
They did go on, and I have a lot of them on 3/4-inch video if we could find
Don MacArthur.
An antique shop. Yeah,
A lot of, well, most comics have to start at open mic nights. That's where you get the stage time, and some of them go on to have great careers. I'm curious, did you get any sleep in between ending a Rascals show and going to Howard Stern? How did that work?
I can't even tell you. It was one thing when I would do a Rascals, but like Mark would give me the entire door at Rascals on Thursday night because it would be dark otherwise. I could fill the place up. He'd give me the whole door, and he'd make a fortune. There's so many stories about that. Like when Heineken first came aboard the Stern Show as a sponsor, I used to hold up a Budweiser, but it was always a water. But instead, I switched to a bottle of Heineken full of water, and I said, "Let's drink a toast," whatever. And Mark came up to me, or you might have come up to me afterwards and said, "Why didn't you warn us about Heineken? We only had 3 cases of it, and we sold it out in the first 10 minutes because they were all." And he said, "You should be paid a fortune, because when those people go out the next night, they order Heineken again because they still think they're drinking with you," which kind of didn't register with me.
We had a champagne bucket filled with Heinekens on ice up on the stage for him.
Let's give some chops to the Magnuson brothers, especially Mark Magnuson. They were the owners.
Yeah, I know
Rascals.
nothing about you. How did you know them? Did you stumble upon that gig?
No, I had been friends with them since I'd been 5 years old.
Oh, now see, I never knew that.
Yeah, I had been friends with them.
Now, where did you come in? At what brother?
Drew.
You know what I mean? Because most
Drew.
families like
Yeah,
that, your
no.
friends. Because I had a family where there were 11 brothers and sisters, and I never got older, so I went from this brother to this brother.
No, it was me and Drew, but I used to go to the bar. Remember the little bar they had up there?
Upstairs,
first?
that's
Yes.
where it started.
Right. I used to come into that bar after work all the time, just hanging around.
Now, initially, the shows weren't up there, but the
No.
bar was up there.
They had a little small bar up there.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But the same size as a small bar downstairs. But I was friends with Drew when they started the place, and I used to come in after work.
Drew was in the
Kitchen.
middle.
These are 6 of them all together.
Go through the brothers. Go through the brothers in order.
You would have to start up with Mark.
Mark.
Then Guy Magnuson. He was basically a lawyer. He wasn't part of
Guy?
Rascals. Yeah.
Never heard of him.
Yeah. And then there was
Like Zeppo.
Drew.
Like Gummo.
Gummo.
Drew, Eric,
John.
Ward, and John.
Ward and John.
Yeah.
Wow.
And luckily they hired a manager, because so many comedy clubs today don't even have a manager, have nobody policing the room, have nobody really organizing the place.
Or to answer
Well,
any
do you remember a
questions.
guy named Joel who was there before me?
Joel the Hole.
Yes.
That's what I
He was
called
there
him.
before me.
I haven't thought about that
Okay.
in 40 years.
So he
Say hello to Joel the Hole.
So he trained me, and I know that the guy's getting fired that's training me. You know? So one night when I'm coming into work, I go, "Well, did you fire Joel yet?" And they're like, "No." I go, "So this guy's gonna come downstairs and you're gonna fire him while I'm still here?" You know? And they got rid
That
of him.
was
Now the funny
uncomfortable.
thing was they got rid of him because they said he was selling drugs to the comics.
All you guys still
Okay.
working at Rascals, take one step forward. Where you going, Joel?
They said he was selling drugs
He
to
was
the
selling
comics.
drugs to the
No,
comics?
No, I don't know anything about this, but I swear to God, every single week somebody would come down and go, "Where's Joel?
right.
Where's Joel?"
Oh, that's great. Now, I know when all of a sudden the word was, "Hey, the East Side has a new place in West Orange." And I wanted to get in there, and I didn't get booked right away, and I got booked. And then it was weird, like they weren't that anxious. And then all of a sudden when I was on the Stern Show and bringing them people in on Tuesday night, all of a sudden I became a favorite son. And then they started with the TV show, and they said, "Are we going to book Jackie on the TV show?" And I remember Messina saying, Rick Messina, who's a big-time guy now, who is the agent for, the
Tim Allen.
manager for Tim Allen, Drew Carey, host,
Started as a bartender at the East Side Comedy Club.
No. There's a picture on the back of my first album where I'm standing at the bar wearing a hand-drawn Off-Hour Rockers of my band T-shirt. And if the picture was this wide, you would have seen him tending bar at like the Purple Onion or one of those names in Bethpage. We brought a show in there. Me and Richie Miniveri brought a show into that bar, and he must have looked at it and seen something happening. And he's like, and then when the East Side happened, I think
East
Messina
Side
was
Comedy Club, Long Island's first full-time comedy club.
and he got himself to be
Right.
bartender there, and
He became the booker in the long run, right?
right, and the stories go on and on.
Yeah.
But when at Rascals, he was responsible, or he handled the Rascals deal for East Side, and they said, "We're going to put Jackie on the Rascals," and he said, "I don't think Jackie's really ready for television."
What's the connection between East Side and Rascals?
They found the club, they found, I don't know whether they found the club or the club, because the East Side was the only game in town, really.
That's on Long Island.
Yeah, but they must have heard about it or come to them.
They just did, what happened at Rascals, they did a comedy on a Thursday night one time. They were trying all the different things with that downstairs room. And they had bands down there and everything.
And they must have
they
found...
They tried it out on a Thursday night, didn't know anybody. They called some friend that worked for William Morris or something or other. They gave us our first, they sold out like this, and they went, well, we might have something here. East Side, I don't think ever came into the realm. I think the only reason that came into the realm was because
they were partners. They were getting a good chunk of the money. Yeah, No Messina ran that.
He was the booker.
But it was, you know what? I'm
not sure.
Like
You might be right. I wasn't there in the first couple of years.
But I know that they weren't going to have me because I wasn't ready for television, and then I did the show, and the next thing I knew, I was hosting the television show. It was like, I guess
But that was years later. The very first show I saw, before I even worked there, he was the host, Rich Jenny was the middle, and Joe DeLion was the headliner.
Unbelievable.
That was the very first show I ever saw there.
Rich Jenny, the incomparable late, unfortunately, Rich Jenny, went on to an incredible career. Joe DeLion, a great career too, terrific comic magician.
I think he's still around.
He is still around,
You know,
he definitely is.
It's amazing. Everybody's still around. You know, I got so sick, 20 years I got sick of saying, you're still in this?
You're still
in this? You know, the first time I waited in line...
You're still doing it or you're still alive is the question.
Which is
the
same.
Yeah.
The first time I waited in line sitting on the sidewalk at Catch a Rising Star in like 1977, not looking to be a comic, just trying to see what this thing was all about, I sat next to Mike Reynolds, who's also no longer with us. And then 3 years later, one of my first paying gigs ever was at the Rainy Night House in Queens, and I walked in, I was like, and there's Reynolds juggling. And I said, you're still doing this? And he said, you're still doing this? I was like, you know, and that was the first time it opened my eyes to the fact that, you know, win, lose, or draw, it stays in your craw.
Yeah, of course.
You know.
But is there anybody that you know that really did it and did it well that stopped doing it? No,
you can't.
You can't really stop
Well,
it.
they stopped doing it because they wind up in the ground. You know,
right.
And the reason is because it's addicting. And comics will tell you that having an audience in the pocket of your jacket is better than sex. Better than sex, especially for you.
Oh, my God. Well, it's not better than sex with myself, but other sex. You know, because we talk all the time about the guys that are still in it, that are still waiting to get that first laugh, you know, which really isn't true, but it's, you know, like, how the hell did they maintain? You know, I'm not naming names, but I'll see somebody who was never, ever, ever funny, and what are you up to? Oh, I've been on the ships for 30 years. Like, doing what? Cleaning toilets? You know, like, it's crazy.
Well, I remember in the 80s, if you were a ship comic, you were a has-been. Okay, and all of a sudden it turned around to the point of everybody's doing the ships now.
Because they upgraded the money, they upgraded the lodging on the ships.
I remember one particular guy, no names mentioned, but I remember there was somebody working with him, and he's putting the guy down that he's a ship comic. You know, like you're just a has-been.
Well, you know, there was
and then
so
he went
many
on to be the biggest ship comic out there right now.
I got you.
So many different little walls and cliques. You know, I remember the whole thing with Nelson. Bob Nelson was a fantastic comic and rose to great heights. And he was a prop comic. And that was like a line of demarcation. Like the guys on Long Island did whatever they could to make people laugh their asses off, because a lot of the crowds, you know, it was like the Blues Brothers saloon with the net and the bottles flying. Not really. And the city comics were nice and quiet and very heady and thoughtful. And they would make fun of the guys on Long Island because this guy's a ventriloquist and this guy's a juggler, whatever. But it was a whole big deal. And I remember, I didn't get in a fight, but I got so pissed off. I was working at a comic strip in Fort Lauderdale. And Bob Nelson was going on last. And I think I was like hosting or whatever. I was probably going on last. I always went on last because I was so loud and dirty. It had nothing to do with talent. It was like, I'm on last. But Mac and Jamie, do you remember them?
Of course.
It was a two-man act, very talented, had their own TV show in the 1800s, you know. And they're still around out in LA. I'm sure they make a good living, either separate or whatever. But they were a two-man act. And then Nelson's on stage, and he's killing. And I heard these guys start grumbling, like, yeah, look at him up there with, with those stupid props, like that's so ridiculous. Anybody can do this with that. And I said, wait one friggin' minute, you jerks. And I really did. I was sick because this had gone on for a few years. I said, he uses props. When you're on stage, what is the single best prop you could have? Another human being. And every night you guys go up, you got the best prop you could possibly have, and you're criticizing him, and they were like, I never thought of that, But it's absolutely true. I know when I was playing in a band, and I was telling jokes, if I was doing terrible, I'd just look at my partner, and everybody's, and they give you time to regroup,
Well, comedians can be really snooty about prop comics, guitar comics, jugglers, comic magicians, and you've taken your share.
Especially the
jokes,
right? And jokes, but especially the guys that aren't doing that well. Because the guys that are doing really well, they know there's room for everybody.
But you even doing the stump man is a prop. You know what I mean?
Everything.
Right. And I remember one time he had the Spanish guy, he's doing it, and Spanish guy stands up in the audience to tell a one-liner, and he says something like, what picture did they put on the Vaseline jar? And Jackie goes, what's that again? He says, what picture did they put on the Vaseline jar? Jackie goes, what? He goes, what picture did they put on the Vaseline jar? He goes, I don't care about your joke. Here's a T-shirt just for saying Vaseline.
I swear, I can still hear it.
Oh, that is hysterical. We got to hear more. Jackie does something called Stump the Joke Man, where audience members do the setup, and he always, you can't stump him, knows the punchline.
And the trick was I would bring the girls on stage.
And that was really what
torture the girls. Yes. In a torture the girls in a nice way, which would get me locked up today.
Yes,
the stuff,
without,
you remember
without
the
a
stuff
doubt.
I said and the stuff
Without a doubt.
My biggest compliment ever was I used to videotape all those shows. My deal when I did Rascals Comedy Hour was I would host the thing, but I only got to do 5 minutes in the beginning.
Correct.
Which I was going to tell you, forget about getting sleep, because I had to have a different monologue every Thursday. So we're doing the Stern radio show, we're doing the Stern television show, and then I'm running out and doing Rascals Comedy, and I'm learning a 7 or 8 or 9 minute monologue. There were old jokes, but you still got to remember what's what.
And he's drinking with me till 3, 4 in the morning.
Yeah. But the deal was they would keep the cameras going, so it wouldn't be part of the show, but he'd give me the tape of Stump the Joke Man.
Yeah.
And I used to make copies of it and send them, and Ward at the South said, when they were all done with the night and everybody's so sick of comedy, they don't want to kill each other, but they'd sit around and have drinks and play the Stump the Joke Man tapes, which is such a compliment, because just watching me torture the people.
Right.
I tried to stump Jackie once with a joke from the 1870s and failed. He knew it. Danny, I want to say this. I never thought of this before, but you know what else is a kind of prop? Crowd work. So mea culpa. That's also a kind of prop. Listen, everybody, this has been terrific. We're going to come back next week.
You always stop the show when you got to go to the bathroom. I see the twitch, and luckily for you, we have to go too. So. Tell them Danny's full name. This is Danny McKenna.
And this is Danny McKenna, the manager of a legendary comedy club. We're going to come back next week with story after story about some of the nutbags, very famous nutbags, who are also great comedians.
And we're also going to find out how a Jewish kid from New Jersey wound up with the last name McKenna.
Thank you, Jackie the Joke Man Martling. Thank you, Danny McKenna.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Professor Bales.
Thank you. And we'll see you next week. Hey, a new episode of Standup Memories every Wednesday.
How exciting is that?
Starring me, Peter Bales, and right here, Jackie the Joke Man Martling.
Please follow us on social media. Search it out. What is it? MeSpace?
MySpace?
Your space?
TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
Doodah.